It's always wonderful to hear directly from our customers. Let's listen in on a conversation between Neil Smith, the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the state of Alaska, and Microsoft's own Brett Tanzer, Vice President of Azure Solutions and Ecosystem.
Hey, Neil. Well, thanks for coming out today. It's great to be able to meet you in person and kind of talk about the great work that's happening at the state of Alaska.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's great. One of the things we want to talk about is your role at the state of Alaska, how long you've been there, and kind of what you do day to day.
Okay, yeah, so I'm the Deputy CIO at the state of Alaska. My primary role is cloud adoption over the last 4.5 years. And then one of my other roles is also ensuring that Azure and different AI tools are available to the employees and the departments of the state.
Wow, amazing. So, we were talking, you said you've been doing this for almost 30 years, kind of your career in IT. That's amazing. You've seen a lot of change, just like I have. Pretty amazing.
All in the state, yeah.
So we've heard the state of Alaska is making a very large push into cloud services. What's the main driver for this? What success are you seeing so far?
Yeah, so our governor is making a really big push on cloud adoption. And so the big driver behind it is to reduce on-premise risk. And so for the past couple of years, the governor funded a large project for the state of Alaska. And so the scope was we are to assess every server in the state of Alaska in the executive branch and to move everything that can technically move. And we're supposed to do this with a minimum impact on the department staff. We're supposed to do this by meeting all compliance requirements. That's what we've actually been working on. And so we just wrapped that up within the last month. And the success we've seen so far is 64% of all of our servers have met the primary objective. They've either been standard migrated, rapid migrated, or actually shut down. 15% of the servers are remaining on-premise for business continuity purposes. And we see about 21% of the servers that have a little bit of a longer requirements that we have to be able to meet, whether that be bandwidth that still has to be able to come to some of the remote locations, or whether there's some extra compliance requirements that we have to be able to meet before we can actually migrate those.
Wow, so you've moved thousands of servers, and it sounds like you've set yourself up for good long-term success, kind of given those changes. That's pretty amazing. What do you think were the key ingredients that contributed to the success overall of the project?
Thank you for asking me that. There's, I definitely want to, there's a technical reason and a non-technical reason that really significantly contributed to our success. And the first one is executive support. Our governor, Mike Dunleavy, he was the one who actually initiated this. And so he actually set the priority. So there was the funding, and then there was the executive priority to actually be able to do that. Prior to this big project, we had CARES money and we had a cloud landing zone, and we were actually trying to get to the cloud, but it was not an executive priority. And so we had the money, we had the time, but we didn't get a lot of adoption. However, once the governor got behind it and set it actually as a priority, and he came down, he actually made it really clear that all the departments would participate, and he went so far as to say, we're not buying any more on-premise hardware. So we're going to the cloud and we're going all in. And so that executive support was significant from what we saw before and after. And so to be able to have that, I mean, there's so many competing priorities at the state, and I'm sure every state has it, every business has it. And when you have that executive support, you get that prioritization. And once you have the prioritization, then people are allowed to say no to other things and participate in there.
Wow, it sounds like he really set you up for success.
He did. There's a number of stars that had to align for the state of Alaska to be successful. That was definitely one of them that actually had to be there. The other one was a technical solution that actually came to us that we participated in, and this was the Azure VMware solutions. Mm-hmm. So on-premise, we were a VMware shop. And so when we went to the cloud, we actually found the Azure VMware Solutions tool that allowed us, and this was kind of the magic sauce that helped us the most. We were able to take our on-premise, we were able to take our servers and be able to move them to the cloud without making any changes to them. We can move without even shutting them down. We can actually live migrate them to the cloud. So this was super important because the application support teams didn't have to recode or rechange anything or rename or re-IP anything. We were able to just move the servers while they were running. So super low impact on the departments there. So that was monumental as far as we couldn't have been able to do it without that. Otherwise, it would have taken up so much staff time to be able to move those servers.
Well, I bet you got a lot of good feedback from those departments after it was done. Did anybody come and tell you, I didn't even know it happened?
To me, that's actually the ultimate compliment in the IT world, because usually you only get a call when things are broke. And so if somebody moves it, and we actually did get some of that. So over my career, that's been kind of the compliment, is you make a change and they go, wow, you guys just did that? I didn't know that. And it's like, yes, now we know we got it right.
Great. Well, sounds like you had good executive support and the right solution, but what are some of the challenges you encountered during the process?
A couple of big challenges that we had to deal with. As you know, Alaska is quite a ways away.
Yeah.
And so the question that always comes to mind is latency. Are you too far away from the data centers or actually things like that? So Alaska, between Anchorage and one of the data centers in California, that's 2,000 miles away. Now, that's actually the same distance between East Coast and West Coast. So that's like moving your servers from East Coast to West Coast or West Coast to East Coast and back, and can you do that? And so there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that comes out there, and people say you can't do that with that type of a latency. So that's one of the solutions that we actually figured out, was that as long as you move the front-end web server and the back-end database server together, you can move them thousands of miles away. And it'll be no different than you sitting on your tablet or your laptop, browsing on a web page that's hosted on the other side of the world. So we were able to take a front-end web server and a back-end SQL server while it was running, synchronizing it, and cut it over 2,000 miles without shutting it down, without breaking a session. So I'm sitting here watching the server go over, and it dropped one ping packet, and the sessions kept going. So that latency, we had to solve for that. Lots of doubt up front. But probably one of the things I'm most excited about is that people, when they think about cloud adoption or they think about doing these innovative things, is that they have a lot of doubt in their mind, and they have these preconceived notions or misinformation or whatever it is. And for us to be able to find these solutions and to show people and to prove, like, look, you can do it. You can actually get past a lot of that misinformation.
I love that, because really you're highlighting some of the strengths about Azure, right? It's an Azure VMware solution product that we really built to work very well natively in the cloud, using SQL Server, synchronizing it across our data centers, and making it all work seamlessly for the good of the customers of the state of Alaska. That's just an amazing story. So what else did you encounter?
Compliance. That's another one of those obstacles that we just hear a lot of concern about. It's like, we can't go to the cloud because we have sensitive information on our network. At the state of Alaska, we have federal tax information, so we've got IRS information we have to deal with. Our public safety officers and corrections have IRS or FBI data, rather, so criminal justice information, CJIS information. Some of our Department of Health has Medicare, Medicaid information. So fairly sensitive type information that we have, and there's lots of controls around it. And so for the longest time, people used to think that you can only go to GovCloud, or we couldn't go to the cloud at all because of that. So that's another one of those things that we really looked into, really dug into, used some Microsoft professional services to try to solve this and say, what is there in the industry that we can actually use to help us work on this. So we actually discovered something called customer managed keys. So this is where you can take a product and encrypt the keys, whether it be something that's at rest or in transit. And once you encrypt it, you hold the encryption keys or the decryption keys. So as far as where our data is, in this case, it's in the Microsoft Commercial Cloud. We have IRS data, we have FBI data, we have Medicare, Medicaid information data that's sitting in Commercial Cloud. We hold all the encryption keys. We just went through an audit, and so far things are actually going well for us. So this is one of those solutions that I know is a big deal for the industry. We didn't have to set up a whole separate landing zone or separate connectivity, but being able to put this sensitive data in the commercial cloud in a responsible way, where we do the encryption and we're all transparent with all the compliance of the federal agencies, that's huge, that's significant, and that's gonna be one of the solutions that's gotta be valuable for other people.
Yeah, it's so important in this day and age for people to feel like their data is safe and feel like they've got privacy around their data, but also for organizations like yourself to be able to manage the security of data without having to worry about it every day. So it's really, and I think customer managed keys is just one example of the things that we do in Azure to make sure that any data you bring to the cloud can be safe, sometimes safer than it can be on premise, because you've got your company and our company leaning in together to protect that data for customers. And so that's amazing.
Not well known, but that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge, yeah.
You know, so one of the things we were talking about earlier is that, you know, you had 100 reasons to fail, but no excuses. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and talk about how kind of having that growth mindset contributed to your success?
Yeah, so even if you have a governor that supports cloud migration, and even though it's actually funded, and even though you have all the technology that can actually support it, you're still going to run into problems. At least we experienced. We still ran into problems. We still ran into stuff that we actually didn't think that was actually going to happen. We had to go into it with that mindset of, you know what, we're going to have all these problems, but we're not going to make any excuses. We need to solve forward. If we have a problem, we just solve the problem by actually getting it, you know, up and into the cloud. If you don't go into a cloud migration with that mindset, you will take any one of those reasons to fail, and you will use that as an excuse not to. They're gonna pop up, but if you are going with that mindset of, I'm gonna push through this, I'm gonna actually find a solution for that. So we went in with that mindset, and we were able to solve many problems by going forward. So yes, there's gonna be hundreds of reasons to fail. Don't take any of those as excuses, and be able to actually push through that. So one of the things that probably surprised me the most about this cloud migration was actually a non-technical piece. So yes, there's a technical challenge, and can you migrate thousands of miles and do all this, live migrate and all this other thing. But the part that I probably didn't see coming, that I had to make the biggest adjustment was the people. Just because the governor says go to the cloud doesn't mean everybody is automatically, mentally and emotionally and gung-ho on board. We had to deal with a lot of pushback. I call it fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's FUD. You're going to get that. You're going to get that pushback there, and so being able to lean into that, have some type of a solution that's going to be able to counteract the misinformation. You have to have facts, and you have to be consistent, and you have to just be work on that. We actually ended up, to be able to get through some of that, you're not going to convince everybody at once. So one of the things we had to do is just go with the momentum. Go with the people that are willing, start solving the problems, get the information out there, get people going on, and then people continually come on board. We actually had a department, this is right up front when we were ready to start doing this cloud migration. They go, we're not really sure that the cloud is mature yet, so we would like to support the governor, but we would like to go last. Right? And so you can just see that uncertainty and doubt that was there, and for us to have to be able to push through that and be able to give people solutions and help them get past that. I think that's probably the thing that I'm probably the most excited about here and now, is to be able to push through those mental limitations that people have. And we have examples of doing it, whether it be compliance or latency or, hey, can you lack of staff, and how do we move stuff with our lack of staff? We proved it, we did it. And so, that's a really great story for people who are looking at this. And so that's probably the thing I'm probably most excited about is helping with that.
Amazing. It seems like such a very Alaskan thing to go do, is to push into the new frontier and bring everybody along with you. It seems like such an important thing. And I think you're right. Like if you guys had confidence, and so you proved it out. You built the data to prove that it would be possible. You had good plans, and then you didn't tell everybody. You just showed them that it can work, and they were able to get confidence. That's really amazing. Did you have any potential, or did you have any pitfalls or gotchas that you might kind of share with others who are going to go through the same experience?
Yeah, there was the other part that we didn't see coming was the current state of our network and just not having a lot of the documentation around that. We went through this routine as every time we migrated, it would be the discovery, plan, and migrate, discovery, plan, migrate. And it was that discovery phase where we're a state organization, so we've been around a long time, not like some younger commercial companies, but as a state organization, we had just a lot of technology, and it's been around a long time. So trying to get through that discovery phase and being able to find the servers, tie them to the applications so that we can bundle them together so you didn't move something and break something else there. We got into that. We thought it was going to go rather rapidly. And once we got in there and started doing the discovery, we found out we actually had to talk to people because there was no documentation in place. We had so much tribal knowledge that the only way to get through that was actually do the documentation. So getting in the middle of that, we started doing those discoveries there. We started going in, tagging all the applications and servers. We said, okay, we did one pass. How did we do? You still have 900 servers that nobody claimed. It's like, who do these belong to? How do they actually go through that? So getting through that phase there, that ended up taking more time. We got like 5 months into this project. We're in the middle of a rapid cloud migration project. We got 5 months into it, and we had like one test server that we had migrated to prove the infrastructure was there, but we had to do so much discovery. But once you got the discovery, and once we knew exactly what we were doing, then it was like every 2 weeks we were moving hundreds of servers every 2 weeks. So during that first phase of addressing 900 servers, it all moved in like 3 months.
Yeah, I hear that story over and over again for customers. Once they get into the process of actually doing the migration and they get to it causes them to really take stock of what they have in their environment. But once they get through that, things move fast and, they start to see the results. It's really amazing.
Be patient up front with that. Give yourself some time. And so hopefully, leadership and everyone else will see we're doing a rapid cloud migration, but we'll give us some time to get things organized.
And I love it that you really, I love what you said about having kind of designing an environment for migration up front. That's how you proved out all the technical feasibility. And so that was your recipe. And once you have the recipe and you know where all of the other pieces are, then it's just a matter of go, go, go. I love that.
And if somebody else wants to, is looking to do something like this as well, that was the other piece, that the kind of the lessons learned there. Prior to the rapid cloud migration, we had the state of Alaska entered into a digital alliance with Microsoft. And so Microsoft had invested in the state and helped us come in and set up a landing zone. So helped us build the governance, set up the landing zone, and that takes time because a lot of it culturally, your teams have to get on board. You have to understand your networking, your dedicated circuits, your express routes, et cetera. So that was something that it's a good thing we had done that in advance. I mean, minimally, that's going to take you 9 months to a year to get that all worked out and your team's on board. So had we not done that at the time of the rapid migration, that would have added a year to our project. But back up, reverse, we'd done that all in advance. It was sitting there, it was just waiting for us. So that was probably one of those stars that aligned that super helped us.
Awesome. Now, after you got it done, how does the cost look? What do you see kind of as the cost compared to running your solutions in AVS on the cloud versus running VMware on premises? That's the big topic on most VMware users, of most VMware users' minds today. So
I think that was one of the early concerns that all popped up was, is the savings really in the cloud? The cloud's been around for, over a decade now and probably two and pushing it in some areas. So that conversation came up frequently. And there's a couple of ways to answer that. And if you just do an apples to apples comparison, so if you go right down to here's the server and here's the storage and here's the compute and this is what what does it actually cost in cloud native versus AVS or versus on premise, if you get right down to it and do a very small apples to apples comparison, there certainly is. We actually demonstrated the savings that showed up in the Gartner research. Is like there's a 20% savings on that if you're just looking at that server. But I think what people are more interested in is what's the total cost of ownership, and this is where I'm going to challenge people. I'm going to challenge people that I don't believe that they understand what their total cost of ownership is on premise. I will challenge them. They kind of know what their servers are, they know what they're paying, but they're not thinking of all the costs and the cooling and the infrastructure and their current risks that they're dealing with on premise that they're accepting simply because they're used to them. So I'm going to turn around and say, in order to do an actual cost of comparison between what you're doing on premise and what you're doing and the cost of your service in the cloud, that's a value conversation. And if you're going to have a value conversation, you have to do one of two things. You either have to find a cloud that has the same risks and infrastructure that you have on premise, so you have to find a cloud that as bad as you're doing it on premise or has the same risks, or you have to build your on premise with the same features and values and capabilities as in the cloud and then do a total cost of ownership comparison.
It's true. Like people very often they do think they know their costs and they have control of their costs. But when you look at the value proposition, I'm running it in the cloud. I've got massively large teams of people running my data centers. I buy hardware in bulk. I have, teams of organizations around the world 24/7 operating it at scale. And so, there's just a bunch of inherent efficiencies that come from running it in scale, provided that I can give each and every customer the experience that they need. And I think, so when you talk about TCO, it's all of that kind of rolled in together for the organization.
But back to that reason of, the main reason for the state's cloud migration was to reduce on-premise risk. And that on-premise risk, there's a lot of inherent risks there with the infrastructure and a lot of things. There's just add value. Once you get to the cloud, there's a certain amount of value there.
Amazing. Well, tell us why you chose Azure. As you just said, you had to pick a cloud. Tell us why you chose Azure for hosting your cloud service.
Yeah, going to the cloud was to reduce on-premise risk. We were a Microsoft shop, so it made a lot of sense for us to do our lift and shift to Azure. Our state governance, and we actually have other services that are multi-cloud, so Azure wasn't the only one. But it made a ton of sense to do the infrastructure as a service and to do the Azure VMware solutions, primarily because of that seamless transition that we could actually make. That was big. That was the only way that we're going to do the buy-in. That's the only way we're going to meet that requirement to not impact departments and to do that particular overhead to be able to do that. So there was a technology play on that one there. Also, we're in Alaska. So there's a geopolitical and a geographic reason on why we actually moved to the cloud. I'm not going to speak for the governor or put any words in his mouth. You know, he just said we're going to reduce on-premise risk. But as everybody knows now, this has actually proven itself over the last few years that all wars have a cyber element to that. And if we're in Alaska, we're an Arctic nation, so we're up there competing with the other Arctic nations. I don't know if you knew this, but the ice on the North Pole is melting enough during the summer that cruise ships can now go over the North Pole. Instead of having to go down through the Panama Canal, you can now go from west coast of America over the North Pole and get over to Europe that way. So now it's becoming, a waterway up there. So as an Arctic nation, as United States, there's a geopolitical reason for us to put our services in an environment where we can defend them. There's only so much fiber that goes to Alaska. There's only so much infrastructure we can invest in that environment. And if all of a sudden China or Russia becomes interested in Alaska or doesn't want to, or wants to take our services down, we're less capable to defend ourselves on premise than we are in some type of a world-class data center there.
Amazing. So it's really for the citizens of Alaska, it's every great thing you do with Microsoft at your back and Microsoft Azure. That's pretty amazing, actually, to think about it that way. And it's, with our recent pandemic experience and things like that, there are reasons really to think about coming into one of those situations where you're going to need the benefits of a big provider like Microsoft standing shoulder to shoulder with you. That's amazing.
Also fiber to Alaska. I mean, that's we only had marine fiber up until a couple of years ago. We've only had the only fiber to Alaska was marine fiber or high orbit satellite. So I think there's recently within the last couple of years there's now a terrestrial fiber that comes down through Canada, and we now have low orbit satellite. But every year or every couple of years, the fiber cuts to our capital in Juneau. And all of a sudden, all of our servers in Juneau, all of a sudden those services are not available to the rest of the citizens throughout the state of Alaska. So that's a geographic reason, and it gets cut for earthquakes or fishermen or whatever else are actually cutting it. So now with our services in the cloud, if that fiber gets cut, okay, Juneau, they'll come back online as soon as they come back online, but at least everybody else in the rest of the state can get to state services.
Amazing. That's great. So now you've done it. You're almost all done. So how has having your Azure VMware solutions and the workloads running on it in the cloud impacted the state of Alaska's ability to go innovate and take advantage of things like AI and so on and so forth?
This is something that I don't think we could have planned better had we had a crystal ball. There's just, I mean, that's the point of innovation is you don't see it coming. All you do is you just put yourself in a position where you can innovate. And in this case, AI, that's something that was coming along. One of the other benefits that we went to the cloud we inherited was all of a sudden we had immutable backups, that was something we didn't have on premise. That's the number one defense, against ransomware. Mm-hmm. In this case, once we got to the cloud, we now have proximity. For the servers that are in the cloud, they now have immutable backups, and they're right next to all the AI tools. Because Microsoft's partnership with GPT and making the tools available, those tools have been in there for over a year. And now we're going through the same processes that we had to work on and work through with getting people to do cloud adoption and dealing with the FUD. We're going through the exact same thing with the AI tools and getting past the misinformation and all the hype and getting people to materially see the benefit of the AI tools. But we're super excited to have our data right next to the AI tools. And again, our governor has adopted or verbally said, hey, we're going to promote adoption of Azure, of AI and other AI tools to be able to help citizens. So real excited about this opportunity and working with the Microsoft team and partners to be able to leverage those.
Great. Well, I'm sure that you'll be able to kind of scale the AI frontier just like you scaled the infrastructure migration tier. It's great stuff. Thanks for coming today, Neil.
Looking forward to it, no excuses.
Thanks.